Democracy in Korea. A story of hope, resilience, and... Oh wait, did someone just press delete? That's right, folks. President Yoon has declared martial law, proving once again that when democracy gets tough, the tough go authoritarian.
국민 여러분, I hereby declare an emergency martial law in order to defend the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces and to eradicate the shameless pro-North, anti-state forces that are depriving our people of their freedom and happiness. This measure is necessary to safeguard our constitutional order of freedom.
So what happened? Let's break this down. On the 3rd of December 2024, South Korea's president signed an order implementing martial law, citing national security concerns. Sound familiar? It's basically democracy's version of turning it off and back on again. But what is martial law? For those keeping score, martial law is what happens when a government decides regular laws are just too slow. It allows military forces to take over civilian functions, think courts, policing, communication. Basically, democracy goes on vacation. Protests? Banned. Media? Censored. Daily life? Curfewed. For the average citizen, this means no protests, no social media rants. So why did President Yoon really do this? Well, the official line is to restore stability, but let's read between the lines. President Yoon's decision to consider declaring martial law has sparked significant controversy in South Korea. The reasoning behind his move is multifaceted. Number 1. Claims of threats to stability. President Yoon stated that martial law was necessary to protect the constitutional democratic order and counter what he described as anti-state forces, which he accused of sympathizing with North Korea. This rhetoric tied the measure to national security concerns, suggesting that pro-North or oppositional forces were destabilizing the country. Number 2. Political struggles. Yoon's establishment have faced increasing pressure due to a dominant opposition in the National Assembly. His People Power Party lacks the majority needed to pass legislation, leading to a legislative gridlock. Allegations of corruption, low approval ratings, and opposition-led impeachment motions against his officials have further weakened his position. Critics argue that martial law may have been a dramatic attempt to consolidate power or suppress dissenting voices. Number 3. Historical context and missteps. South Korea's history of military rule makes the imposition of martial law a particularly sensitive issue. Yoon's critics have linked his actions to authoritarian tendencies, citing his background in law enforcement and prosecution during less democratic eras as an influence on his governance style. They argue that his handling of crises like the Itaewon tragedy and controversial foreign policy moves reflect a pattern of unilateral decision-making. Now, if history tells us anything, is that martial law tends to benefit the people in charge. At least until it doesn't. Let's look back to the June Democratic Uprising in 1987. Martial law back then ended with hundreds of deaths and a lot of very angry citizens. Spoiler alert, this never ends well.
국민들의 분노는 폭발했고 시위는 전국으로 확산됐다. 당시는 국민들이 군사 정권을 끝낼 대통령 직선제를 요구하던 때였다. 4.13 호원 조치는 대통령 직선제에 대한 거부였다. 전국은 다시 시위로 달구어졌다. 5월 27일 마침내 전국의 민주화운동 지도자 2,200여 명이 함께 세운 민주헌법쟁취국민운동본부가 출범했다. 반독재 투쟁 세력은 하나로 결집됐다. 6월 10일 박종철 군에 대한 고문 살인을 규탄하고 민주헌법을 쟁취하려는 대규모 시위가 펼쳐지기 시작했다. 전날인 6월 9일엔 연세대생 이한열 군이 최루탄에 맞아 사경을 헤매고 있었다. 박종철과 이한열의 죽음 위에 세워진 전두환과 노태우의 군사 권력. 국민운동본부의 지침에 따라 자동차들은 오후 6시를 기해 일제히 경적을 울렸고 승객들은 흰 손수건을 흔들며 동참했다. 10일 하루에만 전국 22개 도시에선 학생과 시민 3,800여 명이 경찰에 연행됐다. 사무직을 비롯한 시민들의 지지와 동참으로 6월 항쟁은 힘을 얻어갔다. 주요 도시에선 날마다 수백만 명의 시위대가 경찰을 무장 해제시키기도 하면서 독재 타도의 함성을 드높였다. 시위가 거듭되면서 사무직들은 더 이상 빌딩 속에서 방관하지 않았다. 시위를 막던 전투 경찰들도 6월 항쟁의 대의 앞에 흔들렸다.
이것도 다 주세요. 화해의 꽃이에요.
수고해. 근데 철탄 좀 던지지 마소.
이거 받으세요. 받아야 대한민국 국민입니다. 경찰관도 대한민국 국민이에요. 네, 국민입니다. 대한민국 국민 이거 받아야 됩니다.
6월 항쟁은 남녀노소, 지역과 계층을 가리지 않고 온 국민이 민주주의란 목표 아래 하나가 됐던 소중한 경험이었다.
Studies on martial law regimes show that economies tend to shrink by up to 10% due to disrupted trade and public trust. Tourism? Don't count on it. Foreign investments? They usually pack their bags faster than you can say economic sanctions. During Ferdinand Marcos's martial law from 1972 to 1986, initial GDP growth of 3.4% annually was fueled by infrastructure projects funded by soaring foreign debt, which rose from $1 billion to $28 billion. By the 1980s, economic mismanagement led to a debt crisis, poverty affecting half the population, and GDP growth plummeting to 1.4% by 1986. Martial law's economic legacy included unsustainable debt, inequality, and a long-term impact on the Philippines' growth. But hey, who needs a thriving economy when you've got order? And speaking of order, the military presence is meant to ensure stability, but history shows that excessive crackdowns often lead to, you guessed it, more unrest. South Korea has been a shining example of democracy in Asia for decades. Martial law puts that legacy at risk. The constitution is basically on pause, and citizens are left wondering, if this can happen once, what's stopping it from happening again? So, to our viewers in South Korea, stay safe, and to everybody else watching, don't take your democracy for granted. You never know when someone might decide it's optional. If this video moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share before martial law bans YouTube. See you next time!